The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. I pressed my forehead against the cold window of the soup kitchen, watching the water turn the streets into rivers of gray. My daughter's hand was warm in mine. Too warm. Lily had been running a fever since yesterday, and I'd spent the last of our money on children's Tylenol that barely touched it. "Mama, I'm hungry," she whispered, her voice scratchy. "I know, baby." We're almost at the front of the line. The smell of vegetable broth and stale bread filled the cramped space. Around us, dozens of people huddled in worn coats, their faces blank with the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones and stays there. I recognized most of them. We were regulars here, had been for the past 8 months since Marcus left. Since he'd taken everything and disappeared into whatever hole criminals crawl into when the people they've betrayed finally catch up to them. Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Mama, that man is staring at us." I followed her gaze across the room, past the folding tables and plastic chairs, to where a figure stood near the entrance. He didn't belong here. That much was obvious from the cut of his black coat. Wool, expensive, the kind that probably cost more than 3 months of the rent I could no longer afford. Water dripped from its hem onto the cracked linoleum, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair pushed back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Beautiful, in the way dangerous things often are. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes so dark they looked black even from this distance. But it wasn't his looks that made my stomach clench. It was the 2 men flanking him. They wore matching dark suits, their stances wide and alert, hands clasped in front of them in a way that suggested they were ready to move at any second. One of them murmured something into his wrist. An earpiece, I realized. Security. The kind you only saw in movies or outside expensive hotels where people like me would never set foot. "Don't stare, Lily," I whispered, pulling her closer. But it was too late. Those black eyes had found us, and I felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. He moved forward, and the crowd seemed to part without anyone consciously deciding to step aside. It was instinctive, the way small animals scatter when a predator enters their territory. He stopped 3 feet away from us. Up close, he was even more striking and more terrifying. There was something coiled about him, a barely contained violence that hummed beneath his stillness. He smelled like bergamot and smoke, expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Rain clung to his hair, his shoulders, but he didn't shiver despite the cold that had us all hunched and trembling. "You're Sarah Mitchell," he said. Not a question. His voice was low, smooth, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't place. My heart hammered against my ribs. Yes. Who are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, his gaze dropped to Lily, and something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. It was gone before I could identify it. "How old is she?" "4, I said, my hand instinctively tightening on Lily's shoulder. "Why? What do you want?" One of the security guards shifted, and I caught the bulge beneath his jacket. A gun. Of course there was a gun. My mouth went dry. The man in the expensive coat studied us for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached into his inner pocket, and I tensed, ready to grab Lily and run even though I knew we wouldn't make it 3 steps. But he pulled out a business card, black with silver embossing. He held it between 2 fingers, extended toward me. "My name is Dante Caruso," he said quietly. "I need to speak with you. Privately." I didn't take the card. "I don't know you. I don't have anything to say to you. It's about Marcus Webb." The name hit me like a slap. I must have made a sound because Lily looked up at me, her fevered eyes worried. I forced myself to breathe, to think past the sudden rushing in my ears. "I don't know where he is," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I haven't seen him in 8 months. He left us with nothing, took every dollar we had and disappeared. So if you're looking for him, you're wasting your time with me." "I'm not looking for him," Dante Caruso said. "I found him 3 weeks ago." The casual way he said it made ice spread through my chest. Found him. Not located or tracked down. Found him. Like something you pick up off the street. "Where is he?" "Dead." The word fell between us like a stone into still water. I should have felt something. Shock, grief, maybe even relief. But there was only a strange numbness, the kind that comes when you've already spent months mourning the death of who you thought someone was. I see, I managed. Before he died, he mentioned something interesting. Dante's eyes never left my face, studying my reactions with an intensity that made me feel stripped bare. He said you had a gift, that you could find things, people. I shook my head, confused. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Sarah. His voice dropped lower, softer, but somehow more dangerous. Marcus worked for me. He stole from me. A considerable amount of money and something far more valuable. In his final hours, he tried to bargain with information. He told me about your ability. My blood turned to ice water. Marcus had talked about me, to this man, to someone who was clearly, "You killed him," I whispered. Dante didn't deny it. He didn't even blink. He betrayed me. He knew the consequences. I backed up a step, pulling Lily with me. We bumped into someone behind us, and I heard their muttered complaint, but I couldn't look away from those black eyes. "I need to go," I said. "We need to go. Right now." I turned, ready to push through the crowd, to run with my sick daughter through the rain to... where? We had nowhere to go. No money, no family, no options. "I'll pay you $100,000. I froze. Lily's hand tightened in mine. Slowly, I turned back around. Dante Caruso stood exactly where he'd been, still as a statue, but something had changed in his expression. Desperation, maybe, or determination. "What?" I breathed. $100,000, he repeated. "Cash. Plus medical care for your daughter and a place to stay while you work for me. All I need is 6 weeks of your time. To find what?" His jaw tightened. For the first time since he'd approached us, he looked away, his gaze fixing on something over my shoulder. When he spoke again, his voice was rough, scraped raw. "My son. He was taken from me 6 years ago. He was 2 years old." The world seemed to tilt sideways. A child. He wanted me to find his missing child. And Marcus, that bastard Marcus, had told this dangerous man that I could do it. "I can't," I said automatically. "I'm not. Whatever Marcus told you, he was lying. I don't have any special abilities. I'm just a waitress. I'm nobody." "Your daughter needs medicine," Dante said. And it wasn't a question. His eyes dropped to Lily, who had started to sway slightly, her fever-flushed face pressed against my hip. "Real medicine. A doctor. Not children's Tylenol from a convenience store." How did he know that? Had he been watching us? The thought made my skin crawl. "She needs antibiotics," he continued relentlessly. "Her fever is too high. Another day or two and you'll be taking her to an emergency room you can't afford, where they'll call child services because you don't have insurance." Each word was a knife, cutting through my defenses, exposing the raw terror I'd been trying to ignore. "Don't," I whispered. "Please. I have a doctor on call. He's waiting in my car. One phone call and he'll examine her, prescribe whatever she needs. You'll have the medication in your hands within an hour." Tears burned my eyes. I looked down at Lily, at her pale face and glassy eyes, at the way she trembled despite the coat I'd wrapped around her thin shoulders. She looked so much like Marcus. The same honey-colored hair, the same light brown eyes. It had been hard to look at her sometimes, in those first months. A constant reminder of how thoroughly I'd been fooled, but she was mine. My baby, and I would do anything, absolutely anything, to keep her safe. "I really can't do what you think I can," I said, but my voice had lost its conviction. Dante stepped closer. I could smell the bergamot again, could see the fine weave of his shirt beneath the open collar of his coat. There were scars on his knuckles, old white lines that spoke of violence long past. "Try," he said simply. 6 weeks. If you can't find him, you still keep the money, the apartment, everything I've promised. No strings attached. It was too good to be true. In my experience, nothing came without strings, especially not from men who admitted to murder without flinching. And if I say no, something dark flickered in his eyes. "Then you're free to go. I won't stop you. But your daughter," he let the sentence hang, unfinished. My hands started to shake. This was a trap. It had to be. But what choice did I have? Lily's fever wasn't breaking. The soup kitchen would close in an hour. After that, we'd be back on the street, huddled in the doorway of a closed shop, hoping the rain would finally stop. "Sarah," Lily whispered, and her voice was so weak it broke something inside me. I looked at Dante Caruso, this beautiful, terrifying man who smelled like money and danger, and made a decision that would change everything. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I'll try." His expression didn't change, but one of the security guards immediately pulled out a phone. Dante took my elbow, his grip firm but not painful, and began guiding us toward the entrance. "Wait," I said, trying to pull back. "I need to—" We were in line for food. "I need to—" "You won't need to stand in lines anymore," Dante said quietly. And just like that, we were outside, where a black SUV with tinted windows waited at the curb, its engine running. The second security guard had already opened the back door. I could see cream leather seats, smell new car and wealth. This was really happening. I picked up Lily. She was so light, too light, and climbed into the vehicle. Dante slid in beside me, and the door closed with an expensive thunk that sealed us into a world I'd never imagined entering. The guard in the passenger seat turned around, holding out his phone. "Dr. Russo is on the line, sir." Dante took it, his voice crisp and authoritative as he described Lily's symptoms. I held my daughter close, feeling the heat radiating from her small body, and tried not to think about what I'd just agreed to. Tried not to wonder what happened to people who failed Dante Caruso. Through the tinted window, I watched the soup kitchen disappear as we pulled away from the curb, heading into a part of the city I'd only ever seen from a distance, where the buildings were tall and clean, where people like me didn't exist. Dante ended the call and looked at me. "The doctor will meet us at the apartment. He'll take care of her." "Thank you," I whispered, because what else could I say? He nodded once, then turned his attention to the window, his jaw tight. In profile, he looked even younger, more vulnerable. I could see the faint stubble along his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, a father looking for his lost son. And somehow, impossibly, I was supposed to help him. Lily's breath hitched against my neck, and I pressed my lips to her burning forehead, praying I hadn't just made a deal with the devil himself. The apartment wasn't an apartment. It was a penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of a building so tall I'd craned my neck trying to see the top when we'd pulled up to the entrance. A doorman had materialized, actually wearing white gloves, and opened the SUV door before the vehicle had fully stopped. We'd been ushered through a lobby of marble and gold, into an elevator with mirrors and soft lighting that made even my reflection look almost presentable. Dante had pressed his palm against a scanner. The top button had lit up without him touching it. Now I stood in the center of a living room larger than any place I'd ever lived, holding Lily while she shivered against me, and tried to process what was happening. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the rain streaking down the glass like tears. The furniture was all clean lines and expensive fabrics, cream and charcoal and deep navy. Abstract art hung on the walls, the kind I'd seen in museum brochures. Everything smelled clean, sterile almost, with an underlying scent of leather and that same bergamot cologne. "This way," Dante said, his hand touching the small of my back. I flinched at the contact, and he withdrew immediately, but the warmth of his palm lingered through my thin coat. He led us down a hallway lined with closed doors, finally opening one to reveal a bedroom that made my throat tight. It was decorated for a child. A boy, I realized. Deep blues and grays, with model cars on shelves and a bed shaped like a race car, but everything was pristine, untouched. A museum of hopes that had never materialized. "You'll stay in the room next door," Dante said, his voice carefully neutral. "The doctor should arrive within 10 minutes. He started to leave, but I found my voice. "Wait. This room. Is this—" It was supposed to be his. He didn't turn around. I had it ready when I thought I'd get him back. That was 4 years ago. The door closed behind him before I could respond, leaving me alone with Lily in a room that ached with absence. I carried her to the next bedroom, equally spacious, decorated in soft creams and pale gold, and laid her on a bed so soft it felt like a cloud. She whimpered, clutching at my hand. "It's okay, baby," I whispered, brushing her damp hair back from her forehead. "The doctor's coming. You're going to feel better soon." "Mama, I don't like it here," she said, her eyes welling with tears. "I want to go home." Home. A word that had lost meaning months ago. But I understood what she meant. The familiar. Even when the familiar was a cramped shelter bed and watery soup. I know. But we're safe here. And once you're feeling better, we'll figure everything out. I promise. A knock on the door made me jump. One of the security guards, the one with the earpiece, stood in the doorway. "Dr. Russo is here, ma'am." "Ma'am?" No one had called me that in ever, maybe. The doctor was a small man in his 60s with kind eyes and gentle hands. He examined Lily thoroughly, asking questions I answered while trying not to think about how much this house call must cost. Finally, he pulled out a prescription pad. "Bacterial infection," he said in accented English. "Nothing serious, but it needs antibiotics. I'll have these filled immediately." He looked at me over his glasses. "She should feel improvement within 24 hours. Keep her hydrated. Let her rest." "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking. "Thank you so much." He patted my hand. "Mr. Caruso is very particular about those under his protection. Your daughter will receive the best care, under his protection." The phrase sent chills down my spine. After the doctor left, one of the security guards, I'd learned his name was Marco, brought in bags of food, real food. Fresh bread, roasted chicken, vegetables that weren't canned or wilted. My stomach cramped with hunger just looking at it. "Mr. Caruso wants you to eat," Marco said. "He'll speak with you after the child is settled." I fed Lily small bites of plain bread and broth, watched as she slowly ate, her eyes already growing heavy. The medicine must have had something to help her sleep. Within 20 minutes she was out, her breathing finally even and unlabored. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her chest rise and fall, and allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd done. I'd walked into a stranger's car, a man who admitted to murder, a man who was clearly involved in things I couldn't even imagine, and I'd brought my daughter into his world. But she was breathing easier now. The flush was already fading from her cheeks. I'd made the only choice I could. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to find Dante standing in the doorway, still in his expensive coat, though he'd shed the outer layer. His shirt was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and I could see the lines of his body beneath it. Lean muscle, the kind that came from deliberate training, not casual gym visits. "How is she?" he asked. "Sleepin'. The medicine is helping already." He nodded, his gaze lingering on Lily's small form. That same pain flickered across his face. "There, and gone. We should talk," he said. "Can you leave her?" I didn't want to, but I also needed answers. I tucked the blanket around Lily's shoulders, checked that she was deeply asleep, and followed Dante back down the hallway. He led me to an office, all dark wood and leather, with a desk that probably cost more than a car. The windows here faced a different direction, showing the glittering lights of the city spreading out like fallen stars. Dante moved to a bar cart and poured amber liquid into 2 glasses. He offered one to me. "I don't drink," I said. "You do tonight." It wasn't a suggestion. I took the glass. The crystal was heavy in my hand, catching the light. I sipped. Whiskey, smooth and burning, and felt it settle in my empty stomach like liquid courage. Dante leaned against his desk, watching me. We were alone, I realized. No security guards hovering nearby, just the 2 of us in a room that suddenly felt too small. "Tell me about your ability," he said. I wrapped both hands around the glass. "I don't have an ability. Not really. It's just, I notice things. Patterns, mostly. Details other people overlook. Marcus said you found his sister when she went missing. The police had been looking for 3 weeks. I closed my eyes, remembering. She wasn't missing. She was hiding. From her boyfriend. I paid attention to what she liked, where she felt safe. It wasn't magic. But you found her." "Yes. And there were others. A missing boy in your neighborhood. A woman who disappeared with her children. How did he know these things? Had Marcus really told him everything about my life? The thought made me feel violated, exposed. "Those were different circumstances," I said. "Your son. He was taken 6 years ago. He could be anywhere. He could be..." I couldn't finish the sentence. Dead? Dante's voice was flat. I know. I've accepted that possibility, but I've never found a body, never found any evidence that he didn't survive. So I have to believe he's out there, somewhere. He moved to the window, his back to me, and I saw his shoulders tighten beneath his shirt. Tell me what happened, I said softly. How was he taken? For a long moment, he didn't speak. The only sound was the rain against the windows, a steady rhythm that filled the silence. His name is Luca, Dante finally said. He was 2 years old. Dark hair, dark eyes. He had this laugh that... He stopped, cleared his throat. My wife and I, we were not in a good place. I was building my business, making decisions that required my full attention. She wanted out, wanted to take Luca and disappear. He turned to face me, and I saw something raw in his expression. I wouldn't let her go. I told her she could leave, but Luca stayed with me. We fought. Badly. And then one morning I woke up and they were both gone. Your wife took him? No. His hands curled into fists. Someone took them both. From our home. In the middle of the night, with a dozen guards on the property. Security cameras showed nothing. It was... professional. Ice spread through my chest. Who would do that? I have enemies, Sarah. Many of them. The kind who would take everything I love just to watch me suffer. His eyes met mine, and I saw rage there, cold and controlled, but absolutely lethal. I spent 2 years searching. I found my wife's body in a warehouse 3 states away. She'd been dead for months. I'm sorry, I whispered. But there was no sign of Luca. No body, no evidence. It was as if he'd simply vanished. Dante's voice had gone hoarse. I've followed every lead, hired the best investigators, paid informants across the country. Nothing. Until Marcus mentioned you. I set down my glass before I dropped it. Dante, I can't promise anything. What you're describing, this is beyond anything I've ever tried to do. I know. He moved closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. He was tall. I hadn't realized how tall until now, with only inches between us. But you'll try. That's all I'm asking. 6 weeks. If you find nothing, I'll still give you everything I promised. You and Lily will be set for years. And if I find him, his expression softened, became almost human, then I'll give you whatever you want, name it. Anything in my power. The intensity in his gaze made it hard to breathe. This close, I could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, could smell that bergamot and smoke scent that was uniquely him. Why me? I asked. Why not professional investigators? Because they think like professionals. They follow protocols, databases, patterns. But you, Marcus said you think differently. You see things others miss. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair away from my face. The gesture was so gentle it made my heart stutter. And because I'm desperate, Sarah, I've tried everything else. His touch lingered, his fingertips trailing along my jaw. I should have stepped back, should have reminded him, and myself, that this was a business arrangement, nothing more. But I was frozen, caught in the gravity of his grief and need. I'll do my best, I heard myself say. That's all I ask. But he didn't move away. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, his expression unreadable. You're exhausted. When did you last sleep? Really sleep? I don't remember. Then sleep now. Tomorrow we start. But tonight, you rest. Both of you. His hand dropped, and the absence of his warmth felt like loss. There are clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom. Anything you need, ask Marco. He'll get it for you. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Dante walked me to the door, his hand once again touching the small of my back, a gesture that felt possessive, protective. At the threshold, he stopped. Sarah. His voice was low, almost intimate. You're safe here. I need you to understand that. No one will touch you or your daughter, not while you're under my roof. Okay, I whispered. I mean it. His eyes bored into mine. You belong to me now, and I protect what's mine. The words should have terrified me, should have sent me running back to Lily, gathering her up, fleeing into the night. But instead, They settled over me like a blanket, warm and suffocating and strangely comforting all at once. I returned to the bedroom to find Lily still sleeping peacefully, her color already better. I showered. The bathroom was marble and gold, with water pressure that felt like heaven, and found silk pajamas in the closet that fit perfectly. How had he known my size? I crawled into bed beside Lily, pulling her close, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this massive penthouse, Dante was also lying awake, thinking about his lost son, wondering if this desperate gamble would finally bring Luca home, or if I would just be another failure in a long line of disappointments. I closed my eyes, exhaustion finally pulling me under, and dreamed of dark eyes and gentle touches and a small boy with his father's face, calling out from somewhere I couldn't reach. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize, in a bed softer than anything I'd ever touched, with the scent of coffee drifting through air that smelled clean instead of damp and moldy. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all crashed back. The soup kitchen. Dante Caruso. The deal I'd made. I sat up quickly, my heart racing, and looked for Lily. She wasn't in bed. Panic flooded through me. I threw off the covers and rushed to the door, yanking it open, and nearly collided with Marco, who stood in the hallway like a sentinel. "Where's my daughter?" I demanded, my voice sharp with fear. "In the kitchen with Mr. Caruso, ma'am. She woke an hour ago, asking for you. He's been keeping her entertained." I pushed past him, following the sound of voices down the hallway. The kitchen was enormous, all white marble and stainless steel, with an island bigger than my old bedroom. And there, sitting at a breakfast bar with a plate of pancakes in front of her, was Lily. She looked better. The fever flush was gone, replaced by healthy color. She was wearing new clothes, soft pink pajamas that fit her perfectly, and she was laughing at something Dante had said. He stood on the other side of the island, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His hair was still damp from a shower, and he was flipping pancakes on a griddle, like this was something he did every morning. "Mama," Lily saw me and beamed. "Mr. Dante made me pancakes, with chocolate chips." I stared at them both, my mind struggling to reconcile the image. Dante Caruso, a man who'd admitted to murder, who commanded armed guards, who lived in a penthouse that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime, was making my 4-year-old daughter pancakes. "Good morning," he said, his eyes meeting mine over Lily's head. "Coffee?" Yes, thank you." He poured a cup from an expensive-looking machine, added cream without asking how I took it, and slid it across the counter. When I picked it up, I realized he'd gotten it exactly right. How did he know? "How are you feeling, baby?" I asked Lily, moving to her side and pressing my hand to her forehead. "Cool, normal, much better. And Mr. Dante says after breakfast we can watch cartoons. He has every channel." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." I looked at Dante, trying to read his expression. He'd been up for hours, clearly. There was breakfast laid out. The kitchen was spotless, and he looked completely at ease. "Thank you. For this. For taking care of her. She reminds me of him," he said quietly. "Luca, the way she talks. Her smile." The grief in his voice made my chest ache. I watched as he plated the pancakes, added fresh strawberries, and set them in front of Lily with the kind of care that suggested he'd done this before. "For another child, in another life. Eat," he told me, gesturing to the spread he'd prepared. "You need your strength. We have a lot of work ahead of us." I sat beside Lily, accepted the plate he offered, and took a bite. The pancakes were perfect, light, fluffy, sweet. I hadn't tasted anything this good in months. Years, maybe. Dante leaned against the counter, watching us eat with an expression I couldn't decipher. Possessive, almost, like we were something precious he needed to guard. "After breakfast, Marco will take Lily to the media room," he said. "There's a woman coming. Her name is Rosa. She'll watch Lily while we work. I don't know if that's... Rosa has been with my family for 30 years. She raised me. I trust her with my life." His tone left no room for argument. "You can't focus on finding Luca if you're worried about Lily. This way, she's safe and entertained, and you can concentrate." He was right, but I hated it. Hated leaving my daughter with strangers, even if those strangers came with Dante's guarantee of safety. Okay, I said finally. But I want to meet her first. Of course. Rosa arrived 20 minutes later. A round woman in her 60s with warm brown eyes and hands that immediately reached for Lily like she'd been waiting her whole life to hold her. Within 5 minutes, she'd won Lily over completely with promises of cookies and princess movies. I watched them disappear down the hallway, feeling the separation like a physical ache, and turned to find Dante watching me. "She'll be fine," he said. "I promise you. I'm not used to leaving her with anyone." "I know, but you're not alone anymore, Sarah. You have help now. Let me give you that." The intimacy in his words made me look away. This man was my employer, nothing more. I needed to remember that. "So where do we start?" I asked, forcing myself to focus. Dante gestured toward his office. "I have everything. 6 years of investigation files, witness statements, security footage, psychological profiles. I've analyzed it all 100 times. But maybe you'll see something I missed." The office looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more functional. But when Dante opened a closet, my breath caught. The entire space was filled with file boxes, dozens of them, labeled with dates and locations. A corkboard on the wall was covered in photos, maps, red string connecting various points like something from a crime show. "This is..." I couldn't finish. "My obsession," Dante said flatly. 6 years of searching. This is what it looks like when you can't let go. I moved closer to the corkboard, studying the photos. They were all of a little boy, dark-haired, dark-eyed, grinning at the camera with chubby cheeks and dimples. Luca, in some photos, he was held by a beautiful woman with long black hair and a distant smile. His mother. Her name was Isabella, Dante said, standing beside me. "We married young. Too young. She was the daughter of a business associate. It was strategic." "You didn't love her?" "I tried to. But we were both trapped in a marriage neither of us wanted. The only good thing that came from it was Luca." His finger traced the edge of one photo. "He was everything, my reason for continuing to breathe." I pulled down the first file box and opened it. Police reports, witness statements, crime scene photos. The detail was overwhelming, every piece of evidence meticulously organized and cross-referenced. "Tell me about the night they disappeared," I said, settling into the leather chair behind the desk. Dante began to pace, his hands clasped behind his back. "March 15th, 6 years ago. Isabella and I had fought earlier that evening. She wanted to leave, take Luca to her family in Italy. I refused. We went to bed angry." He paused at the window, his shoulders tense. "I woke at 4 a.m. The house was silent, too silent. I went to check on Luca and found his room empty. Isabella's room was also empty. The security system showed no breaches, no alerts. The guards had seen and heard nothing." "That's not possible," I said, flipping through the security reports. "Someone had to notice something." I thought the same thing. I had every guard interrogated. 3 of them were killed when they tried to run. They'd been paid off, turned against me. The others knew nothing. He turned to face me, and I saw the rage still simmering there, years later. "Someone inside my organization helped take them. Someone I trusted, and I still don't know who." I studied the timeline, the guard rotation schedules, the security camera footage stills. Something nagged at me, a detail that didn't fit. "These cameras," I said, pointing to the report, "they were all disabled?" "No, they were working. They just showed nothing. Static on the feeds during the exact hour the kidnapping occurred. That takes technical skill, and inside knowledge of your security system." "I know." His voice was bitter. "I've investigated everyone who had access. Found nothing." I pulled out another file, this one labeled, "Isabella, Autopsy Report." I hesitated before opening it. "You don't have to read that," Dante said quietly. "The details are difficult." But I did read it. Every brutal detail of what had been done to his wife before she died. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to look at the photos, to understand the kind of enemy we were facing. Whoever did this wanted her to suffer. I said. This wasn't quick. It was personal. I know. Dante's voice was hollow. They kept her alive for weeks, tortured her. The autopsy showed signs of prolonged captivity, malnutrition, repeated trauma. But no sign of Luca at the location where she was found? Nothing. No evidence he was ever there. It was as if he vanished into thin air. I closed the file, my hands shaking slightly. This was so far beyond anything I'd ever attempted. Finding a missing sister who was hiding was one thing. Finding a child who'd been taken by professionals 6 years ago, that was something else entirely. I need to think like a kidnapper, I said. What would they want with a 2-year-old? Ransom. No ransom demand ever came. Revenge, then. Taking something precious from you. That's what I've always assumed. But why keep him alive? If the goal was to hurt me, why not send proof of his death? It was a good question. I stood and moved to the corkboard, studying the red strings connecting various points. Locations where Isabella had been held, places where informants had reported sightings, cities where similar kidnappings had occurred. What if it wasn't about you? I said slowly. What if it was about Luca himself? Dante went very still. Explain. You said Isabella wanted to take him to Italy, to her family. What if someone from her side arranged this? Not to hurt you, but to take Luca for themselves. I investigated her family thoroughly. They're legitimate. Old money, respectable. They had no reason to resort to kidnapping. On paper, maybe. But families have secrets, and you said the marriage was strategic. Maybe someone in her family didn't approve. Maybe they thought Luca would be better off away from your business. I could see the wheels turning in Dante's mind. He moved to a filing cabinet, pulled out another set of folders. Isabella's brother, Matteo, he was vocal about his disapproval of our marriage. Called me a thug. Said his sister deserved better. Dante spread photos across the desk. But he was in Italy when the kidnapping happened. Confirmed by multiple sources, but he has money. Resources. He could have hired people. Dante's jaw tightened. If Matteo took my son, if he's had Luca all this time. He didn't finish the sentence, but I saw murder in his eyes. We need more information, I said quickly. About Isabella's family, their finances, their properties. Anywhere a child could be hidden. I'll make calls. He pulled out his phone, but before he could dial, it rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. I need to take this. He answered in rapid Italian, his tone sharp and commanding. I couldn't understand the words, but I recognized the cadence of orders being given. After a moment, he ended the call and looked at me. There's a situation I need to handle. Business that can't wait. Marco will stay with you. If you need anything, I'll be fine, I said. Go. He hesitated, and for a moment I thought he might argue. Then he crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides and cupped my face in his hands. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate that I gasped. Be careful, he said, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. Trust no one but Marco and Rosa. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me immediately. Understand? I nodded, unable to speak with him this close, his dark eyes boring into mine. Good. But he didn't let go. His gaze dropped to my mouth, lingered there for a heartbeat too long. Then he released me and stepped back, leaving me breathless and confused. I'll be back before dinner, he said, his voice rough. Don't leave the penthouse. And then he was gone, leaving me alone in an office full of ghosts and the lingering scent of bergamot. I turned back to the files, trying to calm my racing heart, and lost myself in the search for a little boy who'd been missing for 6 years. Somewhere in all this information was the answer. I just had to find it. 3 days passed in a blur of files and phone calls and photographs that haunted my dreams. I barely left the office except to check on Lily, who had flourished under Rosa's care. She was eating properly, sleeping through the night, laughing in ways I hadn't heard in months. The transformation was miraculous and heartbreaking, a reminder of how badly I'd been failing her before Dante intervened. Dante himself had been absent more than present. He'd return late at night, his jaw tight and his knuckles sometimes bruised, smelling of smoke and danger. He'd find me still working, bring me food I barely touched, and stand behind my chair reading over my shoulder. His presence was both comforting and unnerving, a constant reminder that I was living in his world now, under his protection and his control. On the fourth morning, I found something. "Marco," I called out, my voice sharp with excitement. "I need to speak with Dante, now." Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression neutral. "Mr. Caruso is in a meeting, ma'am." "He cannot be disturbed. This can't wait. Tell him I found something about Matteo." Marco's eyes sharpened. He spoke quietly into his wrist, listened to a response through his earpiece, then nodded. "He'll be here in 10 minutes. It took 7. Dante swept into the office like a storm, still wearing his coat, his hair windswept. 2 other men followed him, both in expensive suits, both with the same predatory alertness as Marco. He dismissed them with a gesture, closing the door behind them. "What did you find?" he demanded. I spread the documents across the desk. Financial records, property deeds, travel manifests I'd spent hours cross-referencing. Matteo made several large withdrawals in the months before and after the kidnapping. Each time, the money was transferred to offshore accounts that are nearly impossible to trace. But I kept digging, following the paper trail through shell corporations and dummy accounts. Dante leaned over the desk, his attention absolute. "And? The money eventually surfaces here." I pointed to a property deed, a villa in Tuscany, remote, heavily secured. It was purchased 2 months after Luca disappeared, through a corporation that traces back to one of Matteo's business partners. "I investigated every property connected to Isabella's family," Dante said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "This didn't come up, because it's not in Matteo's name. It's buried under 6 layers of ownership. But the timing is too coincidental. The purchase, the amount, the location. And look at this." I pulled out another document. Shipping manifests, children's items, clothes, toys, furniture, delivered to that villa regularly over the past 6 years, always in sizes appropriate for a growing boy. Dante went very still, his hands flattened on the desk, and I saw them tremble. "He's been there," he whispered. "All this time, Luca's been in Italy. It's a strong lead," I cautioned. "But we need to verify before. I'm going." He straightened, already pulling out his phone. "Tonight. I'll take a team and we'll—" "Dante, wait." I stood, moving around the desk to face him. "If you go in with armed men, if this turns into a firefight, Luca could be hurt, or Matteo could move him before you arrive. We need to be smart about this." "Smart?" His eyes flashed with rage. "That bastard has had my son for 6 years. 6 years while I've been tearing myself apart looking for him. I should kill him slowly for that, maybe. But first, we need proof. And we need to make sure Luca is really there." He turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. I could see the war inside him, the desperate father versus the calculated criminal. When he looked back at me, something had shifted in his expression. "You're right," he said. "We do this carefully. I'll send someone to surveil the property, confirm if there's a child there. If it's Luca—" He couldn't finish the sentence. I reached out without thinking, touching his arm. The muscle beneath my fingers was hard as stone, vibrating with barely suppressed violence. "We'll get him back," I said. "I promise you." Dante's hand covered mine, his grip almost painful. "Do you understand what you've given me?" Hope. For the first time in years, I have hope. The intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. He pulled me closer, his other hand sliding around my waist, and suddenly we were pressed together, my palms flat against his chest, his heart hammering beneath my touch. "Sarah," he murmured. "My name a prayer or a curse. You've changed everything." I should have stepped back, should have reminded him that this was business, that I was here to do a job and nothing more. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the heat of his body, and the way he was looking at me like I was something precious and breakable. "Dante." His phone rang, shattering the moment. He released me reluctantly, his jaw tight as he answered. The conversation was brief, terse, and when he hung up, his expression had darkened. "There's a problem," he said. "One of my warehouses was hit last night. Someone's making a move against me, testing my defenses." "What does that mean?" "It means I have enemies who sense weakness. And they're not wrong. I've been distracted, focused on finding Luca instead of protecting my territory. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration rolling off him in waves. I need to handle this, personally. It will take a few days. But what about the villa? What about Luca? I'm sending my best man to Italy tonight. He'll surveil the property, gather intel. When I get back, we'll plan the extraction. He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. Can you wait that long? Can you trust me to come back and finish this? Of course. Good. His thumb brushed my lower lip, the gesture so intimate it made my stomach flip. Stay here. Don't leave the penthouse. Marco will keep you safe, but I need to know you're protected while I'm handling this. Dante, I'm not going anywhere. Lily and we're fine here. Promise me. His grip tightened. Promise me you'll stay safe. I promise. He kissed my forehead then, a gesture so tender it brought tears to my eyes. Then he was gone, barking orders into his phone as he swept out of the office. I stood there for a long moment, touching the spot where his lips had been, wondering what the hell was happening to me. The next 2 days were torture. Dante called twice. Brief conversations where he sounded exhausted and frustrated. The situation was worse than he'd anticipated. Someone was actively trying to dismantle his operation, and he couldn't leave until he'd eliminated the threat. I'm sorry, he said during the second call, his voice rough. I know you're waiting. I know you want answers about Luca. It's okay, I told him. We're fine here. Rosa is wonderful with Lily, and I'm still going through the files, making sure we haven't missed anything. Sarah. There was something in his voice that made my pulse quicken. When I get back, we need to talk. About what's happening between us. I'd spent 2 days trying not to think about that. About the way he looked at me, touched me, the possessive edge to every interaction, about the way my heart raced when he entered a room. Dante, I know what you're going to say, that this is a business arrangement, that you're here to find my son and nothing more. But we both know that's not true anymore. It has to be, I whispered. I have Lily to think about. I can't get involved with someone like you. Someone like me. His laugh was bitter. A criminal. A killer. A man with enemies who would hurt you just to get to me. That's not what I meant, but it's the truth. And you're right to be cautious. But Sarah, understand this. It's too late. For both of us. The moment you walked into my life, everything changed. I can't let you go now. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat in the darkened office, my phone clutched in my hand, and tried to process what he'd just said. He couldn't let me go, as if I belonged to him, as if I'd already made the choice to stay. The terrifying part was that he wasn't entirely wrong. I'd spent 6 days in Dante's world, and already I couldn't imagine leaving. The safety, the luxury, the way Lily thrived here, it was seductive. But more than that, it was him. The way he looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. The way he touched me, gentle despite the violence I knew he was capable of. The way he'd taken my broken pieces and carefully tried to put them back together. I was falling for a man who terrified me, and I had no idea how to stop. A knock on the door made me jump. Marco entered, his expression tight. Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. She says she has information about Mr. Caruso's son. My heart stopped. What? Who? She won't give her name, but she's insistent. She says she knew Isabella Caruso. I followed Marco to the living room, my pulse thundering. A woman stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. She was tall, elegantly dressed, with dark hair swept into a chignon. When she turned, I saw she was beautiful and familiar. You were in the photos, I said. With Isabella. You were friends. I was. Her voice was accented, cultured. My name is Sophia, and I've been carrying a secret for 6 years that I can no longer bear. I gestured for Marco to stay, but moved closer to Sophia. What secret? Isabella didn't want to leave Dante. She was terrified of him. Yes, terrified of his world, his violence, his enemies. But she loved him. In her own way, she loved him. Then why did she try to take Luca? Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She didn't. That's what I came to tell you. Isabella would never have taken Luca from Dante. She knew it would destroy him. She knew he lived for that child. The world tilted sideways, but Dante said they fought, that she wanted to leave. She did want to leave, but she planned to go alone. She was going to leave Luca with Dante because she knew he was the better parent. She told me this the day before she disappeared. Sophia wiped at her eyes. I should have come forward years ago. But I was afraid. Afraid of what Dante would do if he knew I'd kept this from him. If Isabella wasn't trying to take Luca, I said slowly, then someone else took them both. Someone who wanted to hurt Dante by making him think his wife had betrayed him. Exactly. Sophia pulled an envelope from her purse. I found this among Isabella's things after she died. I didn't understand it then, but I think it's important. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph. Isabella, heavily pregnant, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. On the back, written in elegant script, "To my dearest, our secret is safe. M." "Who is this?" I asked, holding up the photo. Sophia's face had gone pale. "That's Marco Benedetti. He was..." Isabella had an affair with him, years before she married Dante. They were in love, but Marco was from the wrong family, rival criminals. The marriage could never happen, so she married Dante instead, and Marco disappeared. My blood ran cold. Sophia, when was Luca born? October 15th, 6 years ago. I did the math, counting backward from Luca's birth date to when Isabella would have gotten pregnant. The timeline aligned with the photograph, taken when Isabella was visibly pregnant, with a man she'd called dearest. "Oh my God," I whispered. Luca might not be Dante's biological son. Sophia nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Isabella never told anyone. She let Dante believe Luca was his. But I always wondered. And when they both disappeared, I thought maybe Marco had found out. Maybe he came back for his son. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. Dante answered on the first ring. "Sarah? What's wrong?" "I need you to come home," I said, my voice cracking. "Right now. I found something about Luca, about who really took him. I'm on my way." The line went dead, and I looked at Sophia, at the photograph that had just changed everything. If Luca wasn't Dante's biological son, if Marco Benedetti had taken the boy he believed was his own child, then we'd been looking in the wrong place the entire time. And Dante, this man who'd spent 6 years searching, who'd built his whole world around the hope of finding his son, was about to learn that the child he loved might not be his by blood. It would destroy him, or it would push him to do something even more dangerous to get Luca back. Dante arrived within the hour, and I'd never seen him look so dangerous. He swept through the door like a force of nature, his coat billowing behind him, his face a mask of cold fury. 3 men followed him, not his usual guards, but harder-looking men with scars and dead eyes. The kind who did the jobs no one else wanted to talk about. "Everyone out," he commanded. Except Sarah. Marco hesitated, but Dante's glare sent him retreating with the others. Even Sophia fled, pressing the photograph into my hand before disappearing down the hallway. Within seconds, we were alone in the vast living room, the city lights glittering behind us like fallen stars. "Tell me," Dante said, his voice deadly quiet. I handed him the photograph with trembling fingers. "Isabella had an affair before you married, with a man named Marco Benedetti." He stared at the image, his jaw working. I knew about Benedetti. He was from the Benedetti family. Our rivals. The relationship ended before Isabella and I married. "Dante, look at the date on the back. Look at when this photo was taken." He flipped it over, and I watched the color drain from his face as he did the math. His hand clenched around the photograph, crumpling the edges. "No," he whispered. "Isabella wouldn't have. Her friend Sophia just told me everything. Isabella never stopped loving Benedetti. And the timing of this photograph, Luca's birth date." I couldn't finish the sentence. "Luca is mine." His voice was raw, broken. "I held him when he was born. I was there for his first word, his first step. I am his father. Biology doesn't define parenthood. I said gently, stepping closer. But Dante, if Benedetti found out about Luca, if he believed the boy was his son, then he would have taken him. Dante's eyes met mine, and I saw devastation there. All this time, I thought Isabella betrayed me, but she was taken. They both were. And I've been searching in all the wrong places. He turned away, his shoulders shaking. I'd seen him angry, seen him commanding and cold and dangerous. But this raw grief, was something else entirely. Where is Benedetti now? I asked. Dead. I killed him myself 3 years ago when I found out he'd been working with the people who kidnapped Isabella. His laugh was bitter. I tortured him for days, trying to get him to tell me where Luca was. He said nothing. I thought he was just loyal to whoever had paid him. But now, he wasn't protecting his employers, I said softly. He was protecting his son. Dante's fist slammed into the wall, leaving a crater in the expensive plaster. Then where is Luca? If Benedetti took him, where the hell has he been for 6 years? Benedetti had family, a sister, I think. I found references to her in some of the old case files. She fled the country after her brother's death. To where? Italy. Tuscany, specifically. Dante went very still. The villa, the one you found. It wasn't Matteo's safe house. It was Benedetti's sister. She's been raising Luca as her own. For a moment, I thought Dante might collapse. He leaned against the wall, his head bowed, his breathing ragged. I moved to him without thinking, my hand touching his shoulder. We'll get him back, I said. Your man is already surveilling the property. As soon as he confirms, I'm going. Dante straightened, and the grief in his eyes had crystallized into something harder, sharper. Tonight. I'm not waiting another day. Dante, if you go in angry, if you're not thinking clearly, I am thinking clearly. For the first time in 6 years, I understand exactly what happened. And I'm going to bring my son home. He pulled out his phone, barking orders in rapid Italian. Within minutes, the apartment filled with men, armed, dangerous, moving with military precision. I watched in horrified fascination as they discussed routes, extraction plans, contingencies. What about me? I asked when Dante finally paused. What do you need me to do? He turned to look at me, and something softened in his expression. You've done enough. You found him, Sarah. After 6 years of searching, you found my son in less than a week. I will never be able to repay that debt. I don't want repayment. I want to help you get him back. No. His voice was firm. Where I'm going. What I'm about to do. It's too dangerous. You stay here with Lily. Marco will protect you both until I return. And if you don't return, Dante crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands cupping my face. Then Marco has instructions to make sure you and Lily are taken care of. The money I promised, the apartment, it's all in your name. You'll be safe. I don't care about the money, I said, my voice breaking. I care about you coming back alive. His eyes searched mine, and I saw surprise there, followed by something that looked like wonder. Sarah, don't, I whispered. Don't say something that sounds like goodbye. Then let me say this instead. His thumb brushed away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. You walked into my life when I had nothing left to live for. You gave me hope. You gave me purpose. And somewhere along the way, you gave me something I never thought I'd have again. What? A reason to make it back home. He kissed me then, soft and achingly gentle, and I tasted desperation on his lips. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against mine. Wait for me. Please. I will, I promised. He released me reluctantly and turned to his men. We leave in 10 minutes. Full tactical gear. No one gets hurt unless they're standing between me and my son. Understood? A chorus of agreement filled the room. Dante looked back at me one last time, his expression unreadable, then swept out of the penthouse with his small army in tow. The next 36 hours were agony. I stayed in the office, surrounded by files and photographs, trying to distract myself from imagining all the ways this could go wrong. Lily sensed my anxiety and grew clingy, refusing to leave my side. Rosa brought us meals we didn't eat, her own worry evident in the way she kept checking her phone. Marco stood guard like a stone sentinel, his expression never changing, but I caught him checking his watch repeatedly. Finally, on the second night, his earpiece crackled to life. I watched his face shift from neutral to something like relief. "They're coming back," he said. "They have the boy." I sagged against the desk, tears streaming down my face. "Is Dante okay?" "Unhurt, ma'am. They'll be here within the hour." That hour stretched into eternity. I paced the living room, unable to sit still, while Lily watched cartoons with Rosa. Finally, I heard the elevator chime. The doors opened, and Dante stepped out. He looked like he'd been through hell. His clothes were torn and blood-stained, his face bruised, his knuckles wrapped in bandages, but in his arms, he carried a small boy with dark hair and darker eyes, who looked at the world with wariness beyond his years. Luca. "Papa?" the boy said in Italian, his voice uncertain. "Yes," Dante said, his voice breaking. "Yes, I'm your papa, and I'm never letting you go again." I watched as he carried Luca to the sofa, sat down carefully, and just held him. The boy was rigid at first, confused and frightened, but Dante murmured to him in Italian. Soft words I couldn't understand, but whose meaning was crystal clear. Love. Safety. Home. Slowly Luca relaxed, his small arms wrapped around Dante's neck, and he buried his face in his father's shoulder. Dante's eyes found mine across the room, shining with tears. "Thank you," he mouthed. I nodded, my own tears falling freely. This was what I'd been hired for. This was the job. Reuniting a father with his lost son. Mission accomplished. So why did it feel like my heart was breaking? The days that followed were a blur of adjustment and healing. Luca was understandably traumatized. He'd been told his entire life that Dante was a monster who'd hurt his mother, that he was safer hiding in Italy with his aunt. Learning the truth was going to take time, therapy, patience. But Dante was transformed. The cold, dangerous man I'd met in that soup kitchen had softened around the edges. He smiled now, real smiles that reached his eyes. He laughed at Luca's questions. He hired a child psychologist and sat through every session, learning how to help his son heal. And through it all, he kept me close. I'd expected him to pay me and let me go once Luca was found. Instead, he asked me to stay. Just for a few more weeks, he said. Until Luca was settled, until the boy felt safe, I should have left. Should have taken Lily and the money and started a new life somewhere safe, somewhere far from Dante's dangerous world. But I couldn't, because Lily had bonded with Luca. They played together, laughed together, looked out for each other like siblings, and Rosa had become the grandmother we'd never had. And this penthouse, with its ridiculous luxury and stunning views, had started to feel like home. And Dante looked at me like I was everything. 3 weeks after Luca's return, after the children had been put to bed, Dante found me on the balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain. "Can't sleep?" he asked, stepping up beside me. "Too much thinking." About? About what happens next. About whether I should stay or go. He was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" I turned to face him, studying his profile in the moonlight. The bruises had faded, but new lines had appeared around his eyes. Laugh lines from smiling at his son. "I want to stay," I admitted. "But I'm terrified of what that means." "It means you'd be mine." His eyes met mine, dark and intense. "Completely. I don't do anything halfway, Sarah. If you stay, if you choose this life with me, I will protect you with everything I have. I will give you and Lily everything you could ever need. But I will also be possessive, jealous, overprotective. I will never let you go. That should terrify me, but it doesn't?" I shook my head. "No, it doesn't." Dante pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me like chains. Warm, unbreakable, exactly what I needed. "Then stay," he whispered against my hair. "Stay and let me love you the only way I know how." "Okay," I said simply. He pulled back, searching my face. Okay? Okay. I smiled through my tears. We'll stay. The kiss he gave me was nothing like the desperate one before he'd left for Italy. This was a promise, a claiming, a future written in the way his hands tangled in my hair and his body pressed against mine. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I found you in a soup kitchen, he said. Broken and desperate and beautiful, and you gave me back everything I'd lost. How is that possible? Maybe we saved each other, I said. Maybe we did. 6 months later, I stood in that same penthouse, watching Lily and Luca chase each other through the living room while Rosa laughed and tried to corral them. Dante came up behind me, his arms sliding around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. Happy? He murmured. I leaned back against him, feeling safe and loved and home in a way I'd never imagined possible. Yes, I said, I'm happy. And I was. Yes, Dante's world was dangerous. Yes, there were still enemies lurking in shadows, still threats that kept armed guards stationed at every entrance. Yes, I'd chosen a life that most people would run from. But I'd also chosen a man who would burn the world down to keep us safe, who looked at me like I hung the moon, who'd given my daughter a home and a future, and a brother who adored her, who'd taught me that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the right one. Luca ran up to us, tugging on Dante's sleeve. Papa, Lily says we can't have cookies before dinner. But you said we could have whatever we want. Dante laughed, scooping his son into his arms. I said you could have whatever you need. And right now, you need to listen to Rosa about dinner. But Papa, no arguments. After dinner, we'll all watch a movie together. Deal? Deal, Luca agreed, squirming down and running back to play. Dante turned to me, his eyes soft. I never thanked you properly, for giving me back my son, for giving me back my life. You thank me every day, I said. Every time you look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm the answer to every question you've ever asked. He kissed me, slow and deep, and I tasted forever on his lips. Because you are, he whispered. You're my answer, Sarah Mitchell, and I'm never letting you go. I smiled against his mouth, my heart full to bursting. Good, I said, because I'm not going anywhere. And as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I knew I'd finally found what I'd been searching for all along. Not safety or security or wealth, but home. In the arms of a dangerous man who loved me with the fierce, unbreakable devotion of someone who knew what it meant to lose everything, and who would fight like hell to never lose again.